And welcome back to some sort of the Clear Jets podcast. We're Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we finally have all the answers to the Jets 2024 draft class. We did a podcast on Thursday night after picking Olu Fashanu at 11, and now we're doing one just after Mr. Relevant has been picked. We didn't talk about Malachi Corley yesterday, so we can talk about that, the exciting trade-up that they made at the top of the third round yesterday. But today, a lot of moves, a lot of trades. There's a lot of different ways we could start this podcast, Michael. I mean, I don't want to bury the lead and the excitement of the draft, but I feel like I got to start with the JFM trade because to me, that's the biggest story of day three. We're going to get into all these guys. I think draft grades in a vacuum are dumb, but we are going to go through each of these picks and give them a grade based off like filling a need, the value, and the fit. But some of these guys, especially the day three guys, it's not like Michael and I have really watched them all too closely. So the more in-depth analysis will be coming on our next podcast. But with that said, Michael, the JFM trade, we can start there because I think that's the most pertinent thing that happened today for the Jets. Obviously not good value, clearly a salary dump. It was something that I did notice JFM's little cryptic tweets. It was a couple days ago, and I think I even sent it to you. And it was just like, does seem like maybe something could happen there. When they made the trade for Reic, that was something that was floated, and you look at that high cap number that JFM had. Were you expecting this move at all? And are you shocked at how low the value actually was for JFM?
I mean, happening on draft day was definitely a surprise. I wouldn't say I was totally shocked by it. It's something that, has been floated around, like you said. But, yeah, I was a little surprised, especially with the return that they got. I think that was very underwhelming. I mean, who are some players that they've gotten that same package for?
Jordan
Blake
Willis.
Cashman, Jordan Willis.
Hey, Cashman's good now.
Martin. But we didn't know then.
That's true.
He was going to be what he is. But
yeah,
so definitely underwhelming. I think he's this is a big loss for this Jets defense. I don't think it's something that should be overlooked as like, okay, he's just a casualty, to shed salary or whatever. Like, okay, they already lost Bryce Huff, which they were able to, kind of balance out by getting Hassan Reddick, much different players. But I think overall you wash that out, maybe an improvement. But now John Franklin Myers out as well. That's two of your three or two of your four best defensive linemen.
Three if you count Quentin Jefferson.
Quentin Jefferson in there as well. So that's three of your top five, I would say, from last season. So that's not insignificant in any way. So he was such a key part of this defense. I don't think it was as appreciated as some of the other players on this defense because he doesn't make a lot of splash plays. I think he only had 3.5 sacks, but he's a big-time pressure guy. His edge setting is great. And even in the run game, like he doesn't make a lot of tackles, but he does a great job of playing his role on the edge, just squeezing runs inside, making it easier for the linebackers to rally, make tackles. And then his ability to rotate inside on passing downs, that just helps everyone on the defensive line play their best because he can play multiple roles. So everyone else is able to slide into their position on their down and distance that works for them. So he was a very important cog of this defense, and now you have to replace that. And you didn't get anything back to like they didn't even. I think at least you could get that, but 2 years down the line, definitely underwhelming. But the silver lining is that you do. It is easy now to project where Will McDonald's snaps are going to come from because prior to this, it was kind of difficult to see that because you lost Bryce Huff. You get Reddick, who's going to play more than Bryce Huff was playing. So it was like, where were his snaps going to come from? I think you would find a few extra snaps somewhere, but it was, he's definitely not going to play a big role. But now that Franklin Myers is gone, that's a lot of vacated snaps that he could take over. And it's easy to picture McDonald playing a substantially larger role. And hopefully he lives up to the potential that he had coming out, that I think he did show in very small spurts last year, but the pass rush efficiency was great. It was legitimately very good for him. It's just a really small sample last year. So if he can live up to that and, be the player that they drafted him to be, then I think between him and Reddick, you're at least washing out Huff and JFM, and you could move forward and feel good about how they were able to handle, those two casualties that were a product of, having all the talent that they do, because that is a byproduct of this. You can't keep everybody. So hopefully you can replace that with McDonald stepping up. But yeah, it's a loss. And now you have to bank on the development of him to make up for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that we've talked about in this podcast for a couple of years now. I remember the first time I brought up that the fact that the Jets could trade JFM in 2024 was after the 2022 draft, when they took Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens. And I just noticed that, hey, there's a little bit of an out here in JFM's contract. It kind of makes sense. Obviously, Johnson had the big leap last year, and then entering this year, it's like, I mean, this is what happens when you have almost $43 million in dead money. I mean, it is the void years are nice, and kicking the can down the road is nice, but it's like when you went and brought back or restructured Carl Lawson last year, it's like, hey, you're on the hook to pay him $6 million this year. And that's about what the Jets are going to free up. Here's the thing that was really confusing to me about this trade. And I tweeted this out, but I had the numbers wrong, so I deleted it. So I was just going to say it for the podcast. But if they traded him pre-June 1st, which they did, and maybe there's some details financially that we're missing here, so maybe something will come out, but the pre-June 1st cap savings is $7.3 million by trading JFM to get that 2026 sixth-round pick. And the dead money on that is $9 million. If they traded him post-June 1st, the savings is $13.9 million, and they're only eating 2.4. So again, maybe there is some gymnastics here, and the trade isn't processed until post-June 1st, whatever, it's only a month. But if that's a pre-June 1st trade, it makes absolutely no sense to me, because the pick they're getting isn't until 2026. Like, I would rather cut him post-June 1st. I mean, obviously, the trade, I think, is a little bit better value. But I'd rather just wait until June 1st if you're going to get really nothing for him, especially if this is a salary dump. But that part of the trade made absolutely no sense to me. Maybe something will come out about that. But yeah, I mean, like, they drafted Will McDonald last year, and it was, I think we brought it up again, like, hey, JFM, maybe they get out of that contract in 2024, not because it was a mistake of a contract. He's been a great player for them. And like you said, he's one of the more underrated Jets, and what he does for this defense is going to be a big loss. But it's like you have all these assets invested in the defensive line. And then when they made the trade for Hassan Reddick, I think we looked at it as like, okay, that's the Bryce Huff replacement. But no, with this trade, it's like, no, Hassan Reddick is the JFM replacement, and Will McDonald is the Bryce Huff replacement. Obviously, those aren't perfect comparisons, but when you look at the snap counts, it's like Hassan Reddick is definitely a base defensive end, which I think we already kind of knew, but he's definitely going to be playing a lot of snaps. I don't think he'll hit the second round pick threshold. I think the Jets will be mindful of that. But McDonald he's going to get a big increase in snaps. So that part of it's good. And this is why, as much of the McDonald pick, the need of it could be questioned. And looking back, it's like maybe they would have been better off taking a receiver, whatever. Hey, if McDonald turns into a blue chip edge rusher, which is the reason the Jets took him when it wasn't a big need, that pick will age brilliantly. So a lot of pressure, like you said, is on Will McDonald. It's on, obviously, Hassan Reddick and Jermaine Johnson. But here are the two players that I think have the most pressure on them from this trade. I think Michael Clemens, who had a bit of a down year last year, and we'll see the body composition entering the third year. Obviously, they had him add some weight last year, and I think the thinking was maybe that he would play inside a little bit more, but he didn't really. And I think he just kind of neutered some of his athleticism. I don't think he really made him any stronger. He just looked a little slower to me. So I'm curious to see what they have him at. Do they keep him a little bit bigger in that JFM mold, give him another year with that body type, and maybe give him more snaps inside, or maybe they have him go back to what he played at as a rookie and just kind of keep him as a faster, explosive edge rusher at a big size. And the other guy that has a lot of pressure on him, Javon Kinlaw. He's another guy that has to make a big jump here. And I say jump, and he wasn't even in New York. He had a mini jump last year with San Francisco, obviously a top pick for them in Salas last year, and somebody that clearly the Jets were high on because they gave him $7 million. They gave him double what Quentin Jefferson got, and Jefferson had a great season. But he's a guy that's really going to have to contribute year one and be that difference maker. The Jets are clearly betting on themselves that Kinlaw can develop into something greater than what they had in Quentin Jefferson last year, but you're going to be losing some of these interior pass rushing pressures that you were going to get from Quentin Jefferson and JFM sliding in on third down. So I'm very curious to see the snap distribution. I'll be honest, I effing hated this trade. Well, the only time I've ever censored myself in this podcast. I hated that trade when it was announced. It made no sense to me. I think you texted, I was out picking up some food, and I just saw a text from you that said WTF. And I literally was like, well, they're in the fifth round. What could the Jets have done that would be that I was like, all right, maybe
Yeah.
they took a second running back. That would be the worst case scenario. And then also I looked down, I see they traded him for a 2026 sixth. Yeah, a bit of a stunner in a win now year, but like when you do the math of it all, it's like, hey, they got 43 million in dead cap. You know, I know Woody Johnson has been rolling out the cheddar this offseason. I don't think it's an issue of liquid cash. I just think it's an issue of logistics, you know, and having to pay all these guys. And hey, maybe this opens the door to extending Reic. Do you think that's the case? Do you think that maybe the idea of extending Hassan Reic, which is something I kind of disregarded initially, becomes more of an option here?
It could be, but I mean, in my opinion, I don't think they should, which we discussed when they traded for him. But I think it works best as just a 1 year rental. Like you could get a high value comp pick to make up for the pick that you traded for him. You could get the most out of him in 1 year, and then also he's on the wrong side of 30, and he's a speed based edge rusher. So I don't love his long term outlook if you're extending him into his mid 30s,
especially if he wants the reported like $20 million or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I personally wouldn't do that, but it could be part of this. I don't know. The trade just confused me because I know they have guys to pay. I know they're tight on the cap. They restructured a lot of deals and everything, but unless I have this wrong, I don't think this was necessary to proceed into the season. So I
pre-June 1st, why wouldn't you take the extra $6 million? I really hope I'm just going to be wrong about that, and something will come out that maybe this is being processed afterwards. But like, that seems stupid. I know it's draft day and deals are happening, but like, if he's going to get moved for a 2026 third, just say, or 2026 sixth, just say to Denver, it's like, all right, well, we'll just do this in a month. What difference does it make?
I mean, I think the only thing is, I think you get the same. If I have this correctly,
please tell me I'm wrong.
I think you get the same savings regardless of whether it's pre or post June 1st. It's just if it's pre June 1st, I think if it's post June 1st, like all the savings accelerate to this year. If it's pre, then they're spread out, but it's the same number.
Oh, okay.
If I have that right.
So the dead cap,
I don't think you get more savings. It's just accelerating it.
Okay. So the dead cap that they have listed for pre June 1st is 9 million, and post June 1st it's 2 million. But you're saying, I don't know. Math is not my strong suit. I don't know. Somebody in the comments help us out. That sounds more.
I'm not good with salary stuff.
You're good with numbers though, so you're supposed to be the guy. But yes, I mean, I think that would make a little bit more sense. But still, that I see that dead cap number, and I'm just like, why would they do this now? But okay, either or. I mean, regardless of maybe they're getting the maximum amount of cap savings possible. In a win now year, you'd think they would try to make it work for one more year with JFM. You know, especially when you don't have a direct replace. Like I know Clemens, like that's a big projection. Like, I like Clemens. I think I'm higher on Clemens than most people are, but let's just be honest. He had a down year last year. And then you're projecting him to fill in as probably the third most valuable defensive lineman on the team last year. Probably went Quinnen, JJ, and then JFM. Maybe Huff, so, you know, maybe fourth. But, like, that's a big jump for Clemens, and maybe he can do it in year 3, like, you know. But it's just that was a interesting move in a win now year. But hey, it's not like defensive line is all of a sudden a weakness. I mean, with JJ and with the hope you're going to hope McDonald takes, and with Quinnen Williams, and clearly they're high on Kinlaw, like they have a great defensive line here. It's just they had an outstanding, like all-time defensive line that you felt sure about. And the other thing is, and not to be like, you know, to be negative here, but it's like the Jets on defense have stayed fairly healthy. And that was kind of the nice part about all the depth that they had last year, was you kind of felt like, okay, well, no matter what happens, they should be able to win with 4 because they have, you know, Will McDonald on the bench. They have Bryce Huff. They have these guys. But now it's like they're a little thinner. So I'm curious to see what they do. They didn't draft anybody else on the defensive line. They'll probably sign some undrafted guys. I think they believe in their ability to develop defensive linemen and specifically pass rushers. So, and this defensive coaching staff has proven that they can do that with defensive guys. The offensive development's a different story, but so it's not the end of the world. It was something we kind of talked about, but it was a bit of a stunner on day 3 of the draft on this pushing all the chips in the middle all in year that they couldn't come to some sort of restructure agreement with JFM. But hey, a great player. Wish him well. One of the friend of the podcast, we had him on in like, what was it? It was right when Saleh got hired. It was like January 2021.
2021.
So we lost 2 friend of the pods this offseason, Michael. We got to add some more to the group. But Huff and JFM and Morstead better look out. Maybe they'll sign an undrafted free agent punter. All right. Well, then I don't know where you want to go to next. We can go with the picks here. I mean, we could start with Corley, who's the most exciting pick of the bunch here, I would say. Took him yesterday, traded up for him to get to 65 to take him. Clearly, the Jets were ecstatic to take him. And probably the most excited I've seen the Jets after a draft pick since 2022. Seems like the 2023 draft and then even the Fashanu pick, people were kind of reading into the body language of Douglas and Saleh. This one, you see the phone call, you see the text between Saleh and Douglas, you see the post-draft press conference. They seem like this was the guy they wanted as soon as round one ended. This was the guy they had their eyes on. They go up 7 spots to go get their guy. What did you make of the move up, the deal to get him? And then what do you kind of make of the player and what he can bring to this offense?
Well, I'd like the trade. I feel like it was a low cost for that sort of jump. And I think they actually won the trade points on the trade chart.
They made up for it in day 3. Don't worry.
Yeah, but I like the trade up. And it, like you mentioned, their excitement they had when they drafted him. I mean, it was reported after they had him as their 4th receiver on their board, which is pretty crazy since he was, I think, 12th receiver drafted. But the reaction does make it seem like that may have been the case, as well as the text messages that the Jets put out from Saleh and Douglas. So it seems like they really liked him. And I like it because I think it's a good win now pick for this team because, like, obviously they needed receiver help in terms of someone who could play immediately because they're pretty much only 2 deep right now. And I know, Lazard, he's going to be better with Rodgers, but after how he played last year, he's got to earn everything at this point. That's one of the worst receiver seasons I've ever seen. So he's out of the picture in my mind until he earns it. So you wanted a receiver.
Can we make a Dalvin Cook bet about you getting Lazard's jersey if he hits a certain amount of touchdowns?
No, we're not doing that.
We'll save that for the July pods. Yeah, I think we are.
Even though it's a good looking jersey, even if it says Lazard on it, we're not doing that. So you wanted a receiver who can, be counted upon to potentially be one of your top 3 guys. And with Mike Williams being injury prone, maybe even higher than that. So I think his skill set is very transferable into this offense with Aaron Rodgers in year 1, because Aaron Rodgers loves to just spit out wide receiver screens, see a look that he likes and just get that ball out there. He has a very high rate of wide receiver screens in his career, in recent years especially. He loves throwing crossers. That's something Corley did a lot as well. And like you match those two, I put up a post about it, but you match up Corley's route tree and his favorite routes that he produced the most on and what Rodgers likes to throw. It's a very good match. So I think he's going to be able to come in and use that yak ability, be the yak king in this offense right off the bat. And I still think you could, add a Tyler Boyd or a Corey Davis to get a little more like a higher floor veteran who could be more versatile in the route tree and win against man coverage a little bit more in terms of, this year. Hopefully Corley can develop that down the line. So I think you could improve that aspect this year by still adding someone else. But I think what Corley does well is something that is easy to project for year 1 projection, especially in this offense with a quick passing Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think we obviously were not very high on Brock Bowers. Also, thank God they didn't draft him so we didn't have to deal with getting haunted by that thumbnail of why the Jets need to avoid Brock Bowers from that podcast a month ago. Thank God that he went to the Raiders. What a weird pick that was. But the only good part not the only good part, but one of the good parts about Brock Bowers that we had talked about was kind of the fit in this offense and what he can bring to you in that easy microwaved offense, I think is how he put it, with Aaron Rodgers in the short game. Like you said, when Rodgers gets to the line, he's able to make those quick checks and able to throw those tight end screens or receiver screens. And you can trust that a guy like Bowers, or in this case, Corley, can make a DB miss, get you 5-6 yards, keep you ahead of the chains, just keep you moving. And I think Corley can definitely do that. Like, I think you get what you were kind of the yak potential that you were excited about with Bowers at 10 or 11, whatever, that you can now get in a different package at 65. Obviously, there's a trade-off there, but the yak potential here is the reason the Jets are excited. Everybody's throwing out the Deebo Samuel comparisons. Obviously, those aren't fair. But I do think that is what the Jets are trying to envision when they're this excited for somebody, is that he can have that level of impact down the line. I think year 1, the floor is so high because of that yak, potential. But the reason that he's available at 665, like the reason once you get into the third round, like these guys are all available for something, for some reason, some flaw or another. And so you're just kind of drafting based off those flaws. Which flaws are you willing to accept? And with Corley, the year one floor is so high because the yak ability is top tier. But the reason he's available at 65 is because, well, the route tree needs to develop, and we haven't seen him work down the field as much. And so our team's as comfortable spending a second round pick on him with some of the other receivers in this class. But the Jets, year one, get to plug him into an offense where he doesn't have to win downfield year one. He has Garrett Wilson. He has Mike Williams. We'll throw Lazard in there, but more specifically, Tyler Conklin, Breece Hall. He has other guys in the offense and allow Corley to shine in what he does really well. And we'll see exactly how much pre-snap motion the Jets use. Obviously, it was reported that, and Rodgers said it himself. I was listening to him in an interview that he did, like, I think 3 years ago. I think it was with, I forget the Barstool Park. It was when he was on the Packers and he was like trolling the one guy at Barstool about being a Bears fan, but he talked about how he just likes when there's, there's kind of the conflicting nature of him in that LaFleur offense where there's that pre-snap motion, and he kind of likes just getting to the line of scrimmage, seeing what the defense is in, and being able to change everything. Corley is a guy that I think could benefit from some pre-snap motion, giving him a head start. And so I wonder if we'll see how much that we'll see. But regardless, I think you feel like he's free, easy yards. Year one, at the very least, that's his floor, is that the Jets can get somebody that you feel like can create after the catch. And that's something that, like, last year, like I think I tweeted this out, they averaged I think it was 5 yards after the catch per reception last year, which ranked 23rd in the NFL. And that's a number that's completely inflated by Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. I'd be curious to see what the number is if you take out Breece Hall, and if you take out both of them. I would guess that they're at the bottom of the league. It felt like every single play last year, it was like the guy was getting tackled, whether it was Lazard or Gibson or Ruckert or whoever. They're just getting tackled
outside of Garrett and Breece, there was no yak talent on the team.
Yeah. And so I feel like that was a big, when we talked about it, like, I think Corley was literally the only guy we had mentioned on Thursday's podcast when we were talking about like receivers they could draft. I think you really like that yak ability is just going to take a lot of pressure out of the offense, keep him out of a lot of third and longs, give him some free, easy yards. He'll have some lighter boxes if they're able to exploit some of Garrett Wilson's potential and Mike Williams' potential down the field. So I think there's a lot to like here. And it doesn't even touch on, I know he didn't do it in college, but I think the profile projects really well to him being a good returner year one, which, has had like, fine value last year. I think it's going to have a lot more value when you look at the kickoff return rules for this year. I think the kickoff is going to be a much bigger part of the NFL going forward. And a guy like Corley is somebody I think you feel really good about. So I think you stick him back there. Like, I know he didn't do it in college, but his profile projects as somebody who can really do it. So in terms of like the need, definitely wanted to see the Jets had another receiver. We talked about different skill sets, but I think adding another yak guy to take pressure off the offense and the fit with Aaron Rodgers is great. So the need is great. The fit is great. And I think you like the value of Corley at 65. I know there were some other receivers on the board, Roman Wilson. I'm spacing on the guy from Alabama that the Bengals drafted. Maybe you can help me out. But whatever, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. But there were a couple other receivers on the board. But like you said, the trade up, they didn't sacrifice too much. They go up to 65. They had them ranked 4th on their board, if we believe in that report. So I think if for value, for need, and for fit, it's A's across the board. I loved this pick. I was really excited that the Jets made it. I don't know how you grade it.
I mean, I agree. I think, the need was clear when they drafted offensive line with the first pick. They had a guy that on their board was a massive value at that point in the draft, and they got a trade up opportunity that was, I think, worth the move up. I mean, that was a small price for the number of picks they moved up in the third round. So I think that's an A pick across the board on those factors.
Yeah, and Jermaine Burton was the receiver's name. Okay, so that was after the first two picks, and we'll circle back to Fashanu and grading him on this, but we obviously talked about him in the first pod. After the first two picks, how are you feeling entering today? How are you feeling about Joe Douglas's draft class? Before we get into today's stuff, just kind of they go back to back on offense. They get the tackle, they get the receiver, the two positions that I think a lot of Jets fans were hoping they would address. How did you feel about the draft class, and how does it kind of evolve over today? And we'll get into these picks more in depth, but did your opinion of the class change at all from at the end of day 2 to at the end of day 3?
I don't think so. I think coming into today, you felt really good because they had these top two needs that we all knew about, and they knocked them both out in a big way. Um, Being able to get Fashanu in the first round and then trading up for a guy that they really liked, who, like we said, I think is a great year one fit. So, I mean, hard to do it any better than they did in terms of the value and what was available to them. I mean, you could argue, like, could they have traded up for a receiver and then attacked offensive line later? But these are all hypotheticals within what was available.
Could they have?
I think they
Those
managed
developmental
great,
offensive tackles went off the board in round 2. And like, I know people said they could do that, and like, I'm sure there'll be some developmental O-line that, that'll develop. And
No, I agree. That's why
but
I think they handled it really well because, the depth of this receiver class was the biggest discussion point going into this draft. And you weren't getting that same talk at tackle, which was considered more top heavy. So, I mean, I was team receiver, so I'm not going to be like hindsighted and say this was the best case scenario. Everything else was a bad, stupid idea. But yeah, I think now seeing how it played out, like, you got a great tackle in the first round and you got a receiver later on who is, we still think can be a contributor this year. But if you flip it the other way around, it is kind of harder to see how it could have played out the same way. If you got the weapon first, you don't feel as good about the tackle you're getting later as I think you feel about Corley at that pick.
Well, and also, like, let's just be honest, there are good receivers every draft class. It feels like every draft class, there's plenty of good receivers that you can take. And that's not always the case for offensive linemen, especially offensive tackles like Fashanu with that profile. So I think that was a big part of the reason that, like, you're not drafting just solely for needs, but clearly the Jets are high on him, and it's two birds with one stone. That it's like, hey, you feel a huge need for 2025 and beyond, and you're able to, attack a position that you've missed on, attack a position that's just, there's a dearth of good offensive tackles in the league, and it seems like injuries are higher. So you're getting to the point in December where you're playing guys I've never heard of on the offensive line. We'll talk about Fashion a little bit. We already talked about it on Thursday, but I was very happy to see them go O-line and then happy to see them get their guy at receiver. So entering day 3, I guess part of the reason I asked you that question was because kind of felt like, okay, they got 3 4th-round picks, and then the Jets made a number of trades, including trading JFM, and it did kind of dampen my view of the draft a little bit, if we're just being honest. But I have to counter that with, one, they've had a great offseason. I mean, from free agency to the trade for Reic, you have to be stoked with what they've done. And 2, it's day 3 of the draft. Like, when they get in the 5th and 6th round and they're taking guys and Jets fans are upset that they're not attacking needs, it's kind of like, at this point, it's a complete crapshoot. Like, you can't be upset that the Jets aren't drafting. I think it'd be great to add another interior offensive lineman, and I'm sure there will be somebody that ends up being good. But like, I'm not going to pretend to really know any of these interior guys all that well to be mad enough about the Jets not taking them. If they have a guy on their board higher than a bigger need like safety, which they used at the end of the draft, or interior O-line or DT or whatever, it's like, just take the guys that you like at this point. Because these aren't guys that you're expecting to start. So we'll start off with some of the trades. Can you run through the gauntlet of trades here and the final picture trade value? Because they made 5 trades today, the JFM trade aside. So 4 trades with all these picks. Can we hear about it? And how do you feel the Jets did?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what you just said. I think on draft day 3 draft criticism is just, I think it's really silly because, like, come on. Some of the criticism I see, like, oh, Joe Douglas drafted a Canadian guy and 2 running backs. Terrible, terrible job, Tubby. Like, I've seen that so many times, that exact post. If you look at tweets under the Jets account, like who is your genius idea for the 180th pick? Egghead 56342. Like, I don't know.
Does Twitter still have heads?
It does. It does.
Oh, it does? Okay. The X didn't get rid of it? Okay. Sorry, keep going.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, like, first round, I think you can have stronger takes because these are guys who are going to play, and they're getting paid a lot of money, and a good percentage of them do turn out to be at least starters, and a lot of them stars. So it's like, that's a lot more consequential. So if you want to have a strong take on that, then go ahead, I guess. But at this point, it's like the vast majority of these guys are going to be backups or special teamers, and like 1 out of every 20 is going to be a star. So it just doesn't matter much. It does not matter enough to care about right now. Like hopefully in due time, like out of your day 3 group every single year, you get 1 or 2 good contributors out of that bunch. So like right now, it's like just take the best guy available because they're not good enough to where you should be like sacrificing overall talent to pick the holes that make the most sense for you. If you're going to hit on enough day 3 picks in the long run to get value out of that part of the draft, you just have to go best player available. And that's the way you do it. Because like I said, it's not really a matter of trying, because you do want to hit every single first round pick. But obviously that's not realistic, but you can do that. But the third day of the draft, you're just hoping that over 3 years, over 4 years,
get one guy.
You make 20 picks there. Hopefully 2 or 3 out of those guys are starters for us. And the best way to do that is to just take the best players and not go further down your board because we need this, we need that. So yeah, I think it's silly to just say like, why'd you take these positions instead of these positions? Because especially at this point of the draft, no one has better suggestions. Like, who do you suggest instead? You're just looking at positions. You don't have a player who said he's higher on my board. Like, you didn't make a board. So I'm just talking about
some guys.
Sometimes if you did, then by all means, those are the people like who actually watch draft film and stuff, which I don't have a big board, so I'm not making those suggestions. But if you did, then I think by all means.
Yeah, are you grateful to just that you just get to watch the guys the Jets have picked and you?
I am.
Like,
I am.
Over.
That was the plan all along.
But you're a draft. You described yourself as a draft. You described yourself as a draft nihilist to me like a month ago.
Yes.
You just like, I just want to see the guys they take and then I can look into them instead of watching a bunch of guys they're never going to take.
I am enjoying the benefits of that right now because it's like, all right, these are our guys. This is who I'm going to watch. I don't have like all these alternative.
I get to write 1,000-word tweets on Jordan Travis and film reviews on the 2 running backs they made.
Exactly. So bottom line, I don't think day 3 is worth overanalyzing. And some of these trades too, we'll talk about. And I thought a couple of them were, meh at best. One of them arguably bad.
One of them I really don't like.
It's like, who cares about 10 points on the draft trade chart on day 3? Like I don't think day 3 is worth over analyzing too much, but we're going to do that anyway. So let's talk about some of those trades that they made on day 3. And like, we should have been ready for it because Joe Douglas always does this. Yes. He loves trading back on the 3rd day.
Yeah, what do you think about I want to hear the whole breakdown because I just asked you about it, but what do you think about that logic where it's like, all right, well, you're in the win now year. How many spots can you really give to rookies? Like, it did kind of feel like one of the trades I really liked because I was like, they don't have enough spots for all these rookies. I like going quantity over quality here. Not to say that you want to like have 4 guys in your draft class, but like I had a feeling like, okay, 3/4. It's like maybe they can move up at the top of the 4th, get 2 guys they like, or I thought maybe they'd move back into the 3rd and get, you know what I mean? Like, so what do you kind of make of the logic of moving? Is it just more shots at the dartboard? Is that a better strategy than try to go quantity on day 3?
I guess there's 2 different ways you could look at it because on one hand, you could say that all these picks are kind of similar, so you might as well rack up the quantity instead of the quality. On the other hand, for a win now team that does not have a lot of, forget about starting spots, just roster spots for these guys to earn, maybe you should just, pool them together, try to get one guy you love instead of the quantity. I think it depends on the team's board specifically because like we could look at the draft trade chart or however we want to evaluate it from our perspective. But for them, like let's talk the first trade they made when they went down with the Packers. They go from 111 in the 4th round to 126. That's 15 spots. And they get 190 in the 6th round. That was
terrible value.
This is a bad trade.
I bet you. In
terms of the value on the chart, that's a bad one. They lost. And as a trade down team, you're supposed to win as a trade down team. Generally, they get more value. So I did not like this one. But then again, I think the point I was trying to make is like say on the Jets board at this part of the draft, they felt like, okay, if we move down 15 spots, there's no difference in the guy we're going to get because we have 15 or so guys ranked similarly. Because, based on the trade chart, not a good trade, but based on their board, maybe it was inconsequential to drop 15 spots. So let's get whatever we can get on top of that. So I think it depends on the board of the team specifically.
This is I have obviously no sources here. I wonder though if one of their guys went at 111, because especially Dorless, defensive tackle, went at 109, and the JFM trade was in the works, but 2 tweener defensive tackles went a couple picks before that 111, and you kind of wonder if that's what they're looking at. But again, like, that's just me looking at, hey, this is a need. These are 2 players that have this position next to them. I've read a scouting report on him. That was their guy. Like, I haven't watched too much of Dorless outside of the Oregon games that I saw this year, but like, I do wonder though, just because the trade value was subpar at best, kind of makes you think that, hey, maybe their guy got taken that they were maybe targeting at 111, and then it just kind of turned into like, well, let's just move back. We value, the next 15, 20 guys pretty similarly. Let's just get something. And I will say they did take that 6th round pick, or sorry, they took that 4th round pick, and they did the best deal they made all day, which was turning that 4th into a 3rd next year. What did you make of that trade?
Yeah, that's a steal. This is like the biggest market imbalance in the draft day trades every single year. It's just like, maybe Detroit's guys can be really good. I think that's where they took that Canadian tackle, right?
The 6'8"
I saw
guy
him.
like
I was like,
4'9".
why they trade for a Canadian tackle? And he's like 6'8", 350, 4'9". Like, okay, I see the vision. But can he block people? I don't know. But it just doesn't make any sense. It's just being impatient. Like, okay, why is now worth more than next year? Next year is going to come, and you're like, okay, we could have had a 3rd round pick for a 4th round pick last year. This is a great value. I know the Jets are a win now team, but the Jets are still going to exist next year. We're still going to be Jets fans, right? I think we're still going to want to win next year.
It'll
so
probably exist.
I think
no. Who had that quote? Who had that quote?
Kyle
He's
Shanahan.
Like, he's like, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive next week or something.
I don't know if anyone's going to be alive next week. And he's asked
Something
about
the
quarterback is going to start or whatever. So yeah, I know Jets fans want to win now, but just take the years out of it. You traded a 4th round pick for a 3rd round pick, and this really carries all these trades that they made. Because like we said, the first trade they made, not great, but at the end of the day, the value in terms of the trade chart points, like it's very small. But this trade right here with the Lions, massive win for the Jets, because worst case scenario, if the Lions win the Super Bowl, it's going to be the 96th pick, which would be a 30 spot upgrade from the pick that they gave up to them. And that's 3rd round. So you're still talking at that point, a pretty decent, wouldn't say premium, but third round, that's still a good spot to be.
They used 2/3 to move up for AVT in 2021. Like, so making the pick aside, like, it's a valuable piece.
Yeah, so that's worst case scenario. And even if it lands in that spot, it's worth the same as the 2 4th round picks that the Jets started with on this day and eventually traded with. Plus, they got all the extra picks they got trading back. So worst case scenario, just because of this Lions trade, the Jets are going to win out between the 3 trades that they made in that 4th round in terms of the accumulated value. And that's the worst case scenario if the Lions win the Super Bowl, land at 96, but they're probably not going to and be higher than that. So,
that's the thing, is they made that first trade and we were like, what the hell is this value? Then they made the second trade, and then you can rationalize it and say, hey, the Jets traded 111 for a 6th this year and a 3rd next year. Outstanding job, Joe Douglas. Obviously, that second trade doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And it's like, well, they probably could have just traded 111 for a 3rd next year if the Lions were offering that for 126 or whatever. But whatever. So I was feeling pretty good about Douglas. And then they made the 3rd trade, which was what was the exact number? You have it, but it was the 4th for 2 5ths for
129 for 173 and 176.
What did you make of that value?
I mean, this one actually, in terms of the chart, is more even than the first. This one was pretty much, it was dead even in terms of the value that they gave up for what they got. At first glance, I was pretty shocked. I mean, that's 44 spots down for the last pick of the 5th round. But it actually does come out even. So yeah, just another, I guess, example of the Jets feeling like they were okay with moving back to get the quantity up. So yeah, I mean, ultimately those 2 trade downs that they made were, close to even if it doesn't feel ideal for a win now team to make those steep drops for more picks. But because they were able to make that trade with Detroit to get the 3rd rounder next year, it makes the overall package a clear win. So Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess by getting that, it gives them another trade asset as well. Potentially during the season, that's something you could weaponize and use. They got more quantity for this year, so it's hard to judge it too much without knowing what their board looks like. And I think they were happy with what they came out with in the end. So I'd say solid overall.
Yeah, and then obviously they packaged their 6th to move up to take Travis, the quarterback. So let's get into some of these guys they took on day 3. And again, I mean, the insight we can give onto a couple of these guys, I think we know a good bit about, but the other guys, it's like we need, a week to start actually watching them outside of the scouting reports we've read and the Just Bonds production scouting. But Braylon Allen was one of the running backs I'd actually heard of and watched a little bit of. And I think the thing that you like, I mean, first of all, the size, 6'2", 230, the age, the fact that he's 20, he's not even going to turn 21 until January. The fact that he was contributing right away at 17 years old in college and putting up the numbers that he's putting up is impressive. I think I saw the stat that he had more 100-yard rushing games than any other rookie running back in the class. The thing I really like about this pick is just the fit with the offense, and we'll get into obviously they took another running back later. And so if you had any questions about the Jets switching to more man gap versus zone, I think the 2 running backs they took kind of answer that, because I think they took 2 big bruising running backs. And with Allen, I really like the pick. I think the thing that I like is that he's going to be able to take some of the wear and tear away from Breece Hall, especially in those short yardage situations. And I think that'll pay dividends late in games and late in the year too. I mean, defenses get bruised up and it's like, you're going to have to tackle this kid. And then Breece Hall, who's a nightmare to bring down, but has that extra gear that makes him so special. He has the size that Allen has, but he has that home run hitting ability that Allen lacks. But Allen can, Allen's basically like a boxer working the body, and then Breece Hall is going to come in over the top with the KO. That's I kind of pictured this when they drafted him. It's like, I really like the fit of pairing Breece with, you saw AJ Dillon in Green Bay with Hackett. Obviously the Jets have a lot of coaches from Tennessee. I don't think he's Derrick Henry. I think that's, again, like the Debo comparisons, that's outlandish, but a big bruising running back to put a beating on a defense, to take some of these hits away from Breece Hall, and then letting Breece Hall coming over the top. I think he's just a great compliment to what the Jets want to do with Breece. What did you make of the Allen pick? I guess more specifically, like we've talked a lot about this offseason, how the Jets are transitioning into a tougher team on offense. When you looked at their offensive line, going from that zone, I mean, they're still going to run some zone, but like bringing in John Simpson, who's a mauler, bringing in Tyron Smith, who has that nasty, bringing in Morgan Moses, who's nasty. Obviously, they get AVT back. Then even you look at, Malachi Corley in the 3rd round. That's a guy, I think he had 27 reps on the bench press, which is insane. 27 reps at 225. Like I do 5 reps of like 185, and I feel like a beat. 27 reps of the bar, how many people can do. So that was mind-blowing to me that he did 27 of 225, not to get off on a tangent here, but like they've drafted some guys who are just instill, a toughness and an identity to this offense that I think you really see with this Braylon Allen pick. So what did you kind of make of that pick?
Yeah, I think, after you make the receiver pick, running back 2 does kind of arguably is the top need at that point. Because look, they really needed running back depth after Breece Hall. You pretty much only have Abanikanda. There are a couple other guys in the roster, but they're nobodies. And Abanikanda, you like his potential, but he didn't impress the staff enough to overtake Dalvin Cook last year, which, obviously I think it was obvious he should have been playing over him just to get the reps because Cook was so awful. But yeah, I think this coaching staff knew that as well. They got rid of Cook by the end of the season, but he still didn't play that much. So he didn't have a promising rookie year. When he did play, he fumbled. He didn't really make many plays with the ball. Obviously, the offensive line is terrible, and it was a small sample, so he's not ruled out by any means of being a great player in the future, but he also didn't do anything to secure that RB2 spot. So it did feel like a need going into day 3. And I know a lot of people have said like you should go with the veteran running back, and I don't disagree with that if you can find the right guy, but running back in general feels like the most young man's position in the NFL. You want to be young at running back. It's not, there aren't a lot of running backs that are, better as they get older. You can find some guys who could make an impact in a small role, but I do like the idea of drafting day 3 running backs every year, just staying young. and always trying to find those cheap day 3 home runs. There are so many of them in the league every year.
And yet Douglas has not done it yet. He's done one every year, but he hasn't hit one outside the breeze.
He's tried. So he's had the right idea.
So he figured, why not do 2 this year?
So hopefully he can get. I mean, 1 year Michael Carter was great, but P. Ryan was a bust. Abanikanda,
we'll see.
I don't want to. Let's not rule him out yet. Not a great start, but still plenty of potential for him. But I like the philosophy and yeah, in terms of what you said, how it the message it sends with the overall offensive philosophy. I think this pick and both Davis, who they made a couple picks later, another guy with a similar running style, 100% complements the whole kind of overall haul that we've seen so far between the 2 power scheme guys they bring from Baltimore. I mean, Tyron Smith could fit anything because he's so good, but I think he fits that as well. And now you get these 2 bruising running backs in there, and it really feels like the Jets are building a clear vision for the type of offense they want to be. I mean, the recent years, this has been a very east-west sort of offense, wide zone, speed, home run hitting, and
these guys don't fit that.
They still have aspects of that, but these running backs don't fit into that. Simpson and Moses are not wide zone blockers, so this is becoming a downhill football team.
Smash mouth football.
And it's exciting because it's cool to have an identity and know what your team is bringing to the table each week. And I think the best part of it is that it's a great weapon to complement Aaron Rodgers in multiple ways, both having a run game that is not just capable of hitting home runs, but going 4 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, like what Rodgers' former team, the Packers, did against the Cowboys. When you get to the playoffs, it's great to have a run game that could just carry a 12-play drive down the field. And I think the Jets are building a style of offense that can do that. And then on top of that, the play action you could run off of it is very exciting for Aaron Rodgers. So I really like this overhaul of the vision, and seeing these 2 running back picks is only further proof that what we've felt like they're potentially going to do is something that will legitimately come into fruition. The Jets being a smash mouth kind of offense.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like on Isaiah Davis, like I don't love the pick, but it seems disingenuous to get on here and act like I really know that much about him. I read an article this morning that was like best available, and I saw him, and that was about the lengths I've gone on scouting him before the draft, and then they took him, and I've read the report on him. I don't even hate drafting 2 running backs. Like I think that's the big criticism with a lot of people is like 2 running backs. Like in a vacuum, I don't even hate that because, like we said, like it is, especially on day 3, it's probably the position you're going to have the highest hit rate on. Douglas hasn't really done it on day 3, so why not 2 swings at the bat? You can try to get a contributor. It's a position where you're going to have a lot of injuries. It's also a position where, yeah, maybe they're not paying a veteran free agent at running back. So now there's more of an imperative to find somebody here, especially if Brees goes down. But even if he doesn't, just somebody who you feel like can contribute right away. So I don't even hate taking 2 running backs. Just from what I've seen from Davis, though, it seems like the speed is just so pedestrian compared to what you expect in the NFL. But again, like, hey, I'll withhold all judgment until we've had a week to really actually like watch a game of him and like, I don't know, do a little bit more digging on him. But it did seem like I don't even hate the 2 running backs. I just don't love the second guy. I'm happy with Allen though. If we're gonna go on the need, fit, and value grading system, so not really even talking about the players, I think the need for running back with the Allen pick, I think you give A. I think with Davis, I'll say what, C? Like after you've already taken one. I mean, I don't hate it. The fit with Allen, I think, is A. I don't don't really know that much about Davis outside of if they're going with that man gap scheme, he is a fit for that. So I guess, I mean, I'll put it as a B right now. I think Allen just brings a little bit more. Oh, the other thing about Allen that I wanted to mention too, and you really like this in your offensive linemen, but like former wrestlers, and Allen's a guy who wrestled a lot as a kid. He won a state championship, then he even wrestled in high school. And that's something you want in your offensive lineman. But I really like that in a running back because I think you see it in his contact balance for sure. He's also a guy that I went to Wisconsin, was recruited by Jim Leonard, former Jet safety, to play defense. Was going to be a safety, maybe a future linebacker, like a Jamal Adams type. And then he ended up being a running back. So he's fairly green at position in addition to only being 20. I just like the wrestler tidbit because I think you see that contact balance and that toughness. And then I guess in terms of fit or in terms of value, I don't really know about Davis. I'll put an NA there, but it seems like I know in the Dane Brugler, the Beast, big scouting draft guide. He was pretty low on him. Braylon Allen seems like he went exactly where people kind of thought he would. So I guess that's a B. I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the running backs. Yeah. You have something else?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of drafting a second running back, I would just harken back to what I said earlier about not overvaluing needs, because clearly they liked him enough to take him at this point, despite taking a running back earlier. And, look, oftentimes teams do keep 4 running backs. The Jets only had 2 rosterable running backs going into this. So now they have 4. So they all could make the opening week roster. And even though they did take Abanikanda last year, I don't know if he should necessarily be considered a lock to make the roster. So what if he gets cut and both of these guys are your 2 and 3? So yeah, day 3, you're just trying to find a hit wherever you can get it. So if you're taking 2 shots at running back, hopefully you can get one of them to be your long-term running back too. So I don't have a problem with that. If they drafted a 3rd running back, maybe we'd have some problems.
We did have $5.
You and I
on
both
Mr.
wanted that because we had that on our Mr. Irrelevant bet, which we put 3 positions down.
We put $5
D-line, running back, and linebacker. We thought we had it in the bag, and of course they go for a safety.
I said I know they're going to go with a DB here. We were just trying to get, it was $5 to win.
We talked
90,
about safety too. We liked it, but ultimately didn't settle on it. Regardless, that no one cares about our betting problems. We don't have a gambling issue, but
one of us doesn't.
We also
these $5 parlays are killing me.
We also put a Spencer Rattler team.
All right. Yeah, he didn't. He
probably shouldn't.
Didn't go to the Seahawks.
We're doing okay.
Well, speaking of developmental quarterbacks, I mean, we had a feeling the Jets were going to take one, and they had their pick of the litter. I know Spencer Rattler.
Also, quickly, there's one more thing I was going to add on Isaiah Davis. So I brought up his mock draftable profile, which has all the measurables and stuff. His number 1 comparison among all running backs.
Can I guess?
Time.
Wait.
Yeah, take a guess.
Well, give me a hint. Give me one hint, and then I'll guess. I'm going to guess it's a former Jet.
It is the former Jet. A recent former Jet.
Yeah. Frank Gore.
LaMichael P. Ryan.
Oh, God. I was trying to get optimistic.
Not great. But I will add, also on this list, Ezekiel Elliott, Josh Jacobs, Todd Gurley.
Doesn't have that speed, though. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, at least from the 3 minutes of Just Bombs scouting. He just looks slow and stiff and whatever. All right, whatever. We'll see. Of course, he's going to be the best player in the class. Like next Walter Payton. Well, developmental quarterback, we had a feeling the Jets were going to do it with one of these day 3 picks. They had their pick of the litter. I know Rattler, I think, went before Jordan Travis, but the Jets traded down a number of times. So if they really liked Rattler, they could have gotten him. I know some fans kind of wanted that. And Ian Rappaport even said this on the broadcast, and I said it to you, but I was like, I saw Rattler on that show a couple years ago, and I just remember thinking, God, this guy's such a prick. Like, I hated him. And so maybe he's developed. Obviously, he got humbled with the whole Caleb Williams benching situation. So wish him all the best. But the Jets had their pick of the litter, and clearly Jordan Travis was the guy they liked. Obviously, watched him a little bit because Florida State was so good. He had the injury. I'm curious how soon he'll be back. I know they said that he should be back around training camp. If he's delayed a little bit and doesn't play until the middle of training camp, like, are they going to throw him out there for full preseason games? Like, they'll probably bring in another camp arm who will get some of those early developmental reps. But at the very least, Travis is going to be in those meetings with Aaron Rodgers and with Tyrod Taylor. That's, between the two of them, how many years of starting experience, or at least quarterbacking experience? And Taylor is, a mobile quarterback and can be somebody who's Rodgers is going to get the top billing in terms of mentor, but I don't think Tyrod Taylor's mentorship should go overlooked here as well. I liked Jordan Travis. Again, have to look a little bit more into him. I mean, dual threat guy, has some things to like about him in terms of his arm. I know there's some injury issues. He's a little older, but seems like a high character guy, and he's in kind of the perfect situation, offensive coordinator aside, to sit back behind 2 great quarterbacks, not have to play for 2-3 years. Then, hey, we'll see where he's at when Rodgers is out the door. Maybe he's your backup starting in 2025. Maybe not. Maybe the Jets don't entrust that to him. But at the very least, out of all the day 3 developmental QB swings that they've made, from James Morgan to Taj Boyd to Bryce Petty, I like Jordan Travis. I'm kind of in on Jordan Travis. I have to watch a little bit more about him before I get, that excited about it. But what did you make of this pick and just taking a developmental quarterback in general?
Yeah, it's definitely an idea that I was hoping they would do going into this draft. Joe Douglas talked about it last week, a couple weeks ago, whenever it was, about wanting to be a quarterback factory. And I think that's a great idea that a lot of both quarterback and running back are two great positions to consistently invest into on the third day of the draft, I think. So it definitely seemed like Joe Douglas wanted to do this going into the draft, and they were able to pull it off with a guy that they seem to like. And, he's coming off a serious injury, so that generally means he would have been a higher ranked player had he not had that injury. So hopefully he could come back strong from that and continue on the trajectory he was for the start of the season last year. He is an older guy. I mean, he's had 6 college seasons, which you don't see often. But compared to like other day 3 quarterback shots that you see, like you mentioned James Morgan, I was thinking back to that earlier, like because that was the last time Douglas has done that, right? No one after James Morgan. Like that was in the 4th round, a Florida International guy who wasn't even good there, and he transferred there.
That was a Gase pick. That's my story.
Still wasn't even good. Like that, is that even a 7th round pick worthy quarter? I know, obviously in hindsight, like, he's not even.
Yeah, in hindsight,
even
no.
Even then, it was like what 4th
Well, what
round.
do you think about? Okay, and I meant to. We were going to talk about this on a before the draft, but then obviously we didn't do one last week. But when you're taking a developmental guy, do you want to go for the high ceiling toolsy guy who maybe has some issues with processing and reading defenses, and maybe his stat line's not that good, or maybe he's injury issue, whatever? But it's like, are you just going to take the guy who has some physical traits and we're hoping we can coach him up, or do you go with the guy like, and you see with Brock Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant, the guy who maybe is a fast processor, maybe is above some of these higher ranked quarterbacks mentally, but because he's physically kind of uninspiring, maybe he slipped, and you can get somebody who can actually be a very good quarterback. Like, I mean, Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady's the obvious one, Brock Purdy. What do you kind of weigh when you're going developmental QB3, and where do you think Jordan Travis kind of slides in? I know you haven't watched him that much, so I won't put you on the spot.
Definitely want to watch him more.
But what do you kind of make of that debate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of other positions. I think you kind of go towards the tools route. Like, okay, here's a guy who maybe he didn't perform that well in college, or like you said, any number of red flags he could have, but he has this tool. Like, he's extremely fast, he's long, whatever it might be. It is interesting to think about that. And I think a lot of quarterbacks do get drafted on the 3rd day for that. But when you think about the guys who have worked out from the 3rd day of the draft, I think it leans heavily towards the not impressive, but he can play quarterback type of quarterback. I mean, obviously Tom Brady's the most obvious example, but even you look at the guys in the league right now who are day 3 success stories starting in the league. I mean, the 3 highest rated quarterbacks in the league last year in terms of passer rating were Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins. All 3 of them day 3 picks who I think fit into that mold. None of those guys are impressive athletically. They're pocket passers who are smart decision makers and accurate. So you think about guys like that, and that kind of pushes me to think like maybe, especially in today's NFL, and where we've had so many success stories recently, like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, whoever it might be, a lot of these toolsy quarterbacks who have, teams take a chance on a guy who, like Josh Allen, was not good in college. He's a historic outlier for him being a success in the NFL with his college completion percentage being what it was. But since he worked out, teams are now taking chances on these guys with tools, regardless of how they played in college. And I think the non-tools guys are slipping, but quarterback is still what it's always been. The brain is going to win at that position. And obviously having great tools raises your ceiling, and you need arm strength and mobility and all those things. So it's not to overlook that, but
processing, that's the most important trait.
I've
after watching Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold and all these other guys, it's like the number one trait I look for in a rookie quarterback is processing speed. And we'll see about Travis, but we'll see. That's why I was high on Penix. I mean, I don't know why the Falcons did it, but
basically to sum it up, day 3 quarterbacks, I lean towards the high floor, intangible type guy.
Well, we'll see how Jordan Travis grades out for you. I mean, in terms of need, like I would say developmental quarterback was definitely, it's not a need per se, but it was something we knew they were going to target. So I guess you'd say like a B for that. Value, I feel like that's about, I mean, I think some people could see him going in the 4th. I think the 5th is good value for him. They did trade up for him, so probably another. I think it's probably B's across the board when you could look at need, value, and fit. And again, we're not grading the players because, first of all, some of these guys, especially on day 3, haven't watched that much, and also it's like you can't really draft grades for projecting how these players are going to actually end up is stupid. But like from a need, value, and fit perspective, I'd say it's kind of like a B across the board. Maybe a need is a little higher because you kind of felt like, hey, this is a good year to add this developmental guy. You clearly knew the Jets were interested in it. I don't know how you feel about those grades, but rounding out these last 2, and we'll just do them kind of at the same time. But they finally address defense. They go to the DBs. I'll start with Quantez Stiggers, who has, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of him before today, but has just an incredible story. He was playing in the fan-controlled football league 2 years ago. And I heard it was because I should double check this, but I think it was his dad was sick. And so he couldn't play college. He had to go make money. So he did that route. And then he got an offer from the CFL because he impressed in the fan control football league and was picking everybody off. And to get a tryout at the CFL, he makes the team and then is like the rookie of the year in CFL and has a great season. And then this weird situation where it's like, well, he didn't have enough college plays to just sign with somebody or college games to like sign with anybody. So he has to enter the draft. And there he is as a 5th round pick. From the very little I know about him, it seems interesting. I think the one thing I will say is like, I trust the Jets and specifically, I mean, honestly, all the position coaches, but Tony Oden has gotten a lot of rave reviews for his ability to develop DBs. And I think you've seen it from Sauce Gardner to even a guy like Michael Carter II, even a guy like Brandon Eccles or Bryce Hall, like I think, or Tony Adams. Like I think that might be more Marco Emanuel, but like these DBs and these young defenders, I trust the Jets to be able to develop them, finding guys that have the traits that they like. Clearly they like Stiggers. I think they were high on his character. You saw the guys getting emotional in the draft room calling him. I don't have really anything to say about the player other than, you know what? I trust the Jets to develop a toolsy defensive player. I think they've proven that, hey, the offense is whatever. They haven't been able to really do that. But defensively, they have a few success stories. And I think you're hoping that either Stiggers or Key can be that guy. And Key, Mr. Irrelevant, again, don't really know too much about him other than he transferred to Alabama from, was it UAB? I don't want to be, or FAB. Sorry, not UAB. FAB, I think. FAU. One of these, not FAU. Help me out, Michael, please. No?
I don't know. We're providing great information to people.
Where
here.
did he transfer from? You can talk about Sticker. All right. Well, all right, fine. You look it up. I think it was whatever. I don't know. All right. I was right. But like, yeah, another guy I don't know too much about. So I don't want to get too into it. But again, same thing I would say for Stiggers. I think you're hoping one of these guys can develop. The Jets do have, when you're talking about corner, I mean, safety is probably a more immediate need, although I do like the prospect of Chuck Clark coming back. I think Ashton Davis made some big strides. I think you could see a leap from Tony Adams. So I don't think it's a huge need. Corner is a much bigger need for 2025. So whether it's JBC, and I don't know if it is Bernard Converse a safety or a corner? Did we really declare that? Or is he just kind of, I think he was declared a safety.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Safety, right?
One of these guys, like if they can develop, that'd be great. If they just develop into a special teamer, I mean, that's a hit. And I think you like the special teams value of Key from what I've seen, but like, I'm not going to pretend to know too much about him. So obviously we'll dive into these players and have more insight on them. But Michael, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the only defensive guys that they took today.
Well, I mean, we talked about it coming in that cornerback was a sneaky pick to watch out for. And they did it pretty late. It's not like they did it with their 3rd round pick or early 4th, which I wouldn't have been shocked if they did that. But yeah, they addressed it late. You know, it's, I think, a good position to start thinking about the future here as Reed and Carter look towards free agency. I think it's a good idea to build that pipeline, have someone developing who can hopefully become someone who's ready to step up in case one of those guys ends up leaving next year. And then safety as well, like you said, pretty, well-rounded group. They have a nice collection of guys there, but they also don't have like any superstars there or anything yet. So it's still a position where it's like, let's take some shots and see if we could find something, develop some talent, and just continue adding to that room. So yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be an all offense draft class as much as I would have liked to see that. So I did think these are two good positions to attack there at the end.
Yeah, and like, these guys might not even make especially Key might not make the roster, especially if they only keep 4 safeties and JBC. Really, I mean, I think that's the battle in training camp. I think it's Key versus JBC, and then the loser probably goes to the practice squad. And we'll see how that battle goes. I guess we can. I mean, need, fit, and value grades here are tough. I don't really know what to do here, so I think we just can avoid it.
Yeah,
I think
we can punt on those. Yeah,
we can punt on those. We can come back to that maybe. We want to do Fashanu just because we didn't do it last time. I mean, I think need for offensive tackle is probably a B, because the swing tackle is very high, and I felt with Tyron's injury issue, like for me it was an A, but like every, they can't all be A's. So I would say, what would you say the need portion of the Fashanu pick? It's probably a B plus maybe because of Tyron's injury issues. Is that fair?
I guess that's fair, but I feel like it's an A. I mean, what is a more premium need for them than tackle was?
I felt offensive tackle was an A need, but you're talking about a guy who's, if we're going to give it an A need for a guy who's not going to start, that feels a little, or not going to play off the bat. I've been team offensive tackle since day one. So, but I feel like,
but there isn't any position they could have drafted a starter at. I mean, a receiver would have played, but receiver. I mean, we're assuming that, Fashanu is going to end up playing.
All right. That's an A need. Hey, you don't have to convince me of that. I knew, or I've been preaching why it's why the Jets need to take an offensive tackle here, and why it's the smart move for the franchise. And maybe it's not an obvious need, but it will definitely be one by, what do you think, like week 4?
Probably.
I'm curious to see how many reps they give him at right tackle in training camp. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. But I know he's been just a strict left tackle, but I think they'll probably give him both sides. I know he said he worked on both in the for the draft prep, but overall, I've watched some more Fashanu after they drafted him. I highly recommend watching Joe Blewett's film breakdown that's on YouTube if you really want to get into the weeds with Fashanu as a player. A lot to like. Obviously, some issues there, but just the floor because of the pass protector you're just so excited about. The value for Fashanu, I think, is definitely an A, because I think you're talking about a guy that, first of all, for the most part of the draft process, he was offensive tackle 2. Obviously, for us, he wasn't for our draft board, but for like Joe Blewett, he had Latham higher. For obviously the Titans, they had Latham higher. But this is a guy that if he came out last year, you felt was going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. For most of this draft process, you felt he was OT2, maybe a top 10 pick. But the part that it makes it an A is the fact that they were just able to move down and accumulate those picks, which obviously helped them today. So I think that the value part of the Fashanu pick's an A. I don't know if you disagree with me on that at all, but I feel about that. The fit, I might go B though on the fit with Fashanu, because that was the only reason we had discounted him a little bit, is because of, like, you talk about all the guys they've added on the offensive line, and then some of the running backs and even Corley that they've added. That is the one thing with Fashanu that I think you were left wanting a little bit more of, is that nastiness. And I think he can do the man gap stuff. I mean, especially if he has a year to kind of develop. He certainly has the play strength to do it. I don't think the small hands are that big of an issue, but like you do see it in terms of him staying attached in the run game. Is something that Blewett was talking about a lot. And, maybe he's the type of offensive tackle that I could see the Jets drafting a year or two ago when they were running wide zone, because he's such a good athlete. You love his, him getting out in space, but they'll find ways for him to do that. But I'll just say B, because it feels disingenuous to go A's across the board here. So we're saying A for need, A for value, B for fit.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with that. I'd maybe even say C plus in terms of year 1, because I mean, we talked about this smash mouth identity, and then with Fashanu, I think that's the one main concern that consistently comes up is overall run blocking, nastiness, and things like that. So hopefully that's a question he can answer and he could fit into this. He certainly has the potential to do it. But at the same time, I wouldn't say it's an awful fit, because his pass protection ability, especially in true pass sets, he's NFL ready in that regard. And when you're protecting Aaron Rodgers in a win now year, that is a great skill to have for a guy who's going to be most likely called upon for a lot of starts. So I think pass protection, great guy to have for year 1. Amongst all the tackle prospects, probably it's all and then him in terms of pass protection, and especially year 1 readiness. But I
don't know. Joe Blewett was higher on his hand. I mean,
it is up in the air.
Joe Blewett's not gospel. I know Alt went number 1, but like in terms of his hands and pass protection and his anchor, I think you feel very good about fashion. But I will say, if we're going to use Joe Blewett as our guiding light here, he was last in driving the run game out of the 5 tackles, and he had him as last in mindset out of the 5 tackles. So clearly the fit, but maybe we'll go C on the fit then. But I don't know. So A, and C on him.
Let's say C, just to show we're not homers with A's across the board.
So here. I will say, so here's the Jets draft class and our draft grades, and heavy on the quotes because we're not really even grading the player. We're just grading, again, the need, the value, and the fit. So from need, value to fit, we have Fashanu or Fashion. I've been saying Fashanu the entire time. It's going to take a while to go to Fashanu. But A, C. Corley, I have as A, and I even went and changed the fit to A+ while you were talking. So Corley so far is our best pick. Then Braylon Allen, I B+, B, and A, trying to be balanced in terms of like the need. Running back 2, you could argue is maybe an A need, but I just tried to knock it down because it's like, again, not a starting position, whatever. B+ value, feel like probably B+ value there, and then the fit A. Jordan Travis, I just put B's across the board. And then Isaiah Davis, I actually knocked this down a little bit because I'm not feeling too great about the pick. But again, of course, that means he'll be the best guy they drafted. But I put D, and B. I don't know if you disagree with any of that. We'll circle back to these in about a week or two when we've actually watched some of these guys. But those are the initial grades. And then the defensive guys we're going to leave as blank for now. But those are, people want draft grades. So that's what it is. But they're dumb. So whatever.
I wonder what we thought of Michael Carter II, like our first reaction to that.
I could probably find the doc if I had enough time. Michael, I got to get out of here, but I can't go and look for it. But you know what? That's an interesting. I was looking back through some of my JFM tweets because I was like, I've been talking about the fact that they might trade him in 2024. So I was trying to see if I could find one. I did find some good ones that I'll maybe retweet. I feel it's dumb to retweet about your own stuff, but like one was like after and I think a lot of people were saying this, but I think it was after the loss to Baltimore, and it was just like they need to. Because I think the Jets weren't getting I was basically saying the Jets are doing a good job of like collapsing the pocket, but they're not winning fast enough. They need to activate Huff. They need some speed on the edge. Maybe move JFM inside. I had some good tweets, right. I guess, but plenty of bad ones sprinkled in there too. People can remind me of. All right. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back next week. I promise. We will be back next week. Most likely talking these draft prospects. Maybe we'll have a guest on, maybe not, but it'll give us some time to actually go back and have a full, be able to watch cut-ups of these guys, be able to watch their snaps in 2023 and 2022. So excited to do that. Follow us at TYJ Pod on Twitter, Michael _Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com, best place to go for Jets content. Check out some of the other JetX pods. If you can, subscribe, rate, review on iTunes. It helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the JetX YouTube. I think I already said that, whatever. Last thoughts, Michael?
Great offseason. Love the heavy emphasis on offense. Nothing to do now but to go make it work and win some games.
Nothing to do now but to watch cut-ups of these guys for the next month or two, and I can send you thoughts at 2:30 in the morning on their fit and Hackett's offense. Send you my thoughts on why I think Clemens or Gibson's going to be a breakout player in 2024. That's what you have to look forward to.
That's May and June, baby.
That's May and June. That's believe it or not, those are like our most consistent months. So we'll see. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. We'll be back next week. Great offseason, everybody. We'll see. We'll be talking. I mean, I think they'll be on the practice field next time we talk. They'll have a rookie mini camp at least. So we get to see these Jets helmets out in the daylight. That'll be cool. All right. Get out of here. Thank you for listening. Great week. Go Jets.